Jude Callahan sat in the cockpit of the aging Cessna 402, hands clenched on the yoke, knuckles pale against worn leather gloves. The hum of the engines vibrated through the floor and into his boots, steady, familiar, falsely reassuring. Outside, the Atlantic shimmered beneath a burnished sky, endless and cold. November 820, Miami Center. You're cleared to descend at pilot discretion. Report when established at 3000. Crackled the voice in his headset. Copy that, Miami Center, Jude said, voice even. He adjusted the throttle with the muscle memory of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Nothing out of place, no radio interference, no magnetic flux, just calm air and clear skies. And yet, the silence itched. He scanned the instruments again. Everything nominal. And still, he felt it, that absence that hung like static in his chest. The same quiet that greeted him every time he flew this route. Tapping the dash, he glanced to the empty co-pilot seat. His fingers lingered on the worn leather, the same way a son might touch an old coat left hanging on the back of a door. Come on, he whispered. Give me something. The first time he flew out here, it was for closure. The second, for answers. Now, after all these flights, he didn't know what he was chasing anymore, only that he couldn't stop. Captain Jude Callahan. His father. The name still held weight. Adventurer, charter pilot, risk-taker, runner. Jude had spent most of his childhood watching the back of the man's head disappear down runways. 12 years old when the divorce came through. One duffel bag, a half-hearted promise, back in a week, and then gone. Another job, another island. Then came the real vanishing. 6 years ago, Flight KX-113. Routine Miami to San Juan hop. Clear skies, calm ocean, no distress call, no wreckage, just a missing dot on a radar. What haunted Jude wasn't the mystery, it was the uncertainty. He could have buried a body, held a funeral, made peace. But this was a ghost with no grave. 3 weeks ago, something shifted. A ham radio thread popped up, half buried in a forgotten corner of the internet. Someone had picked up a distorted transmission off the Bermuda coast. Only 5 words made it through the static. Jude, don't follow me. He'd played it 47 times that night. Listened until his ears rang, until he was sure, absolutely sure, it was Reese, his father's voice. Jude blinked, drawn back to the present by a low tremble in the yoke. Just turbulence, probably. He rubbed the ache in his neck and exhaled through clenched teeth. Somewhere below, the sea stretched on, indifferent, ancient, and silent. The Cessna bounced once before settling on the Opelika runway with a groan of rubber and steel. Jude winced. Not his cleanest landing. The tower crackled. Welcome back, November 820. Cleared to taxi. Good day. He offered a half-hearted reply and turned the aircraft toward his rented hangar. The Florida heat greeted him like a damp towel, clinging to his shirt as he climbed down. Barker, his old golden retriever, scrambled out behind him from the rear seat, tail wagging faintly. Jude crouched beside him, ruffling the fur behind his ears. No ghost today, huh, boy? The hangar door groaned open. A familiar figure in grease-stained coveralls stepped out, shielding his eyes with one hand. You're chasing shadows again, Davy said, his voice dry as concrete. Jude gave a lopsided grin. Thought I'd give him one more chance to show up. One day that plane's gonna drop dead in the air just to spite you. She'll outlive both of us, Jude said, then hesitated. Maybe. Inside the hangar's office, the air conditioner wheezed. The scent of old coffee, machine oil, and scorched plastic filled the small space. Becky stood by the desk, arms crossed, eyes locked on him before the door even closed. She didn't speak right away, just looked. I forgot to call, Jude admitted. Sorry. Becky exhaled through her nose. Nothing happened? No static, no signal, no lights, just blue. That's a good thing, she said, but her voice was soft, almost cautious. It's not an answer. He poured himself a stale cup of coffee from the pot that had probably been warm 3 days ago. Took a sip and grimaced. Becky stepped forward. Her tone was quieter now. You're up there even when you're not. You come back, but you never really land, Jude. He offered a ghost of a smile. You sound like my therapist. She's right. Jude looked down into his cup, then set it aside untouched. You don't have to wait, you know. If this is too much, if I'm too much. Don't, Becky said. Just don't. I love you, you idiot. He looked up. But I'm scared, she continued, stepping closer. Every time you fly out there, I wait for a call. Not from you, from the FAA, or a sheriff, or worse, from no one at all. Jude swallowed hard, jaw tight. I keep thinking, she said, voice cracking. Maybe this time the triangle gets both of you. The second flight. The sky was almost too perfect. Jude had been flying for just under 20 minutes, cutting east over the Bahama bank, when the first ripple came. Not in the air, but in his gut. A vibration that didn't match the engine's rhythm. Behind him, Barker stirred in the rear seat, toenails clicking against the vinyl. The old retriever let out a low, uneasy whine. Jude glanced at the dog in the rearview mirror clipped to the dash. "Easy, boy," he murmured. Then he noticed it. The compass was spinning. Slow at first, then faster, erratic, wild. "Miami Center, this is November 820, do you read?" Static crackled. A voice flickered in, fragmented. "Callahan, we're losing your trace, your signals." Then silence. Jude flipped frequencies, tried emergency channels, nothing but static and sharp digital glitches that sounded like they didn't belong in this decade. The GPS blinked, froze, rebooted. Barker let out another low bark, standing now, tense, staring through the side window as if sensing something Jude could not see. Outside, the sunlight dimmed, as though a shadow passed, but the sky remained cloudless. Something pressed on Jude's chest, a slow, tightening pressure. "November 820, the tower voice broke through again, ghost-like. "We've lost radar contact. Signal keeps dropping. Return course. Return." Jude stared ahead. The air shimmered. For a moment, just a breath. The clouds swirled in ways they shouldn't have. He swallowed. His grip tightened. Just 10 more miles. The coordinates where his father had vanished. But Barker barked again, sharp, insistent, almost panicked. Jude blinked. His hands trembled. "Copy that," he muttered, turning west. He banked the Cessna hard. The compass twitched violently. A cold mist crept across the windshield, thin and unnatural, like condensation inside a freezer door. The plane groaned, a sound deep in the frame. Jude didn't look back. He just flew. The landing wasn't smooth. The wheels hit hard, shrieked against the tarmac, and bounced once before the Cessna groaned into contact again. Jude's hands were stiff on the yoke, his jaw locked tight. He didn't breathe until the nose wheel touched down. As the plane rolled to a stop near the hangar, he killed the engines and sat for a moment, the silence in the cockpit somehow louder than the storm he'd just escaped. A shout cut across the tarmac. Davy was already jogging toward him, wiping grease from his hands with a red rag, eyes wide with concern. Jude opened the door slowly. The Florida heat hit like a slap, but it was distant, like everything else right now. Davy reached the steps. "You all right? What the hell was that landing?" Jude didn't answer. Behind him, Barker shuffled in the back seat, whining softly. Jude opened the cabin door for him. The dog leapt down, stiff but steady. Becky was there too. She must have come as soon as she heard the engine overhead. She stood just behind Davy, pale and tight-lipped, her arms folded like a shield. "What happened?" she asked. Jude stepped down from the plane, moving slowly like someone returning from surgery or war. "Just some weather," he said, voice hollow. Becky's eyes didn't leave his face. "Jude?" He didn't meet her gaze. She stepped forward and placed a hand gently on his arm. He flinched, barely, but she felt it. "You saw something," she whispered. "You're not saying it." Jude looked past her into the distance. "I don't know what I saw," he said. "It was nothing, and it was something." He noticed the man by the fence just as the hangar door creaked shut behind him. Denim jacket, sun-faded, ball cap pulled low. One hand rested on the chain link, the other clutched a tattered notebook. "You Jude Callahan?" Jude slowed, instinct tightening in his gut. "Who's asking?" "Name's Charlie. I run a site called Echo Watch. Used to be ham radio forums, back when people still listened." He held up the notebook. "I've been tracking the same thing you have." Jude took a step closer, cautious. Charlie flipped open the book, scribbled frequencies, coordinates, hand-drawn flight paths. "I heard the transmission too," he said. "Garble in the static. Jude, don't follow me. That was your old man, right?" Jude's blood cooled. "How do you know that?" "I know the pattern," Charlie said quietly. "I know the voices. I've seen it happen. Planes, boats, people, just gone. And it's not random. Never was." Jude crossed his arms. "You're peddling triangle myths." Charlie shook his head. "This isn't folklore. It's a wound, a thinning, like the edge of something unfinished. Your dad didn't vanish. He made a choice." "To what? Step into a sci-fi story?" "To cross over. He found something out there, or maybe it found him." Jude stared at the man, trying to read him, delusional or something else. There was a wariness behind Charlie's eyes. He'd lost something, too. "I'm not here for cult stories," Jude said. "I'm just trying to make sense of—" "You want the truth?" Charlie interrupted. "Then listen. Don't go back up. Whatever's out there, it doesn't let go easy." He reached into his jacket and handed Jude a small cassette tape. "Recordings. I've marked the one with your name." Jude hesitated, then took it. "If you fly again," Charlie said, stepping back, "just remember, some doors open both ways, but some don't open at all." And then he was gone, disappearing down the road like a man who'd said too much, or not nearly enough. The house was quiet when they got home. Jude dropped his keys in the bowl by the door and stood there, unmoving. The television was on but muted, one of those wildlife documentaries looping in slow motion. Sharks gliding through blue depths, nothing ever in a hurry. Becky brought 2 mugs of tea from the kitchen. She handed him one, then curled onto the opposite end of the couch, watching him like she was bracing for impact. He didn't drink, just stared into the steam until it faded. "You've changed," she said finally. Jude's jaw tensed. "I'm trying to understand him, that's all." "Understand a man who chose flights over birthdays? Over you?" "He wasn't all bad." Becky's voice rose. "He left, over and over. He didn't just vanish 6 years ago, Jude. He'd been vanishing your whole life." Jude looked away, fingers tight around the mug. "He just didn't know how to stay. And now you're doing the same thing." She set her mug down hard. "You're here, but you're not. You sit at dinner and your eyes are over the ocean. You kiss me goodnight like you're already gone." "What do you want me to say?" he snapped. "That I'll stop? That I'll pretend it didn't happen?" "I can't. I need to know. I have to." "Then go," she said, standing. "Go and chase your ghost. But don't expect me to sit here wondering if I've already lost you." She turned and climbed the stairs, quickening with each step. Jude sat frozen, hands wrapped around the mug now gone cold. The morning came gray and thick with heat. Jude hadn't slept. He moved through the house like a man tracing his own outline. Showering, dressing, packing the flight bag, all muscle memory. At the airport, the hangar doors were already open. Charlie stood off to the side, arms crossed. He didn't call out, didn't argue, just met Jude's eyes as he passed. A quiet shake of the head. Jude paused, but only for a second. The pre-flight checks felt mechanical. Fuel, oil, pressure, numbers and levers that didn't feel real anymore. He settled into the cockpit. Barker climbed into the rear seat and sat quietly, watching. The tower crackled. "November 820, this is Tower. You sure about this, Jude?" He keyed the mic. "Requesting climb to 15,000. "Copy that. Cleared for departure." Jude pushed the throttle forward. The Cessna rumbled down the runway and lifted into the morning haze. The climb was smooth at first, too smooth. Jude leveled off at 15,000 feet. The air was thinner here, the world quieter. Barker sat in the rear seat, watching him. The dog hadn't made a sound since takeoff, just breathing, just waiting. Jude tried to steady his own. The hum of the engines was steady, but beneath it was something else. A tone he couldn't trace. Not mechanical, not imagined. He stared out across the open sky. A memory came. Him, age 8, legs too short to reach the pedals, sitting on his father's lap as they flew over the keys. Reese had laughed, guiding his son's hands on the yoke. "See that island? Yours to steer toward, Captain Jude." It had felt like magic. Now the sky ahead darkened. Fast. Clouds didn't roll in, they bloomed. One moment the sky was clear, the next it was folding over itself in dense churning gray. The altimeter froze. The needles on the panel began to twitch. The radio hissed. "Miami Center, this is November 820, do you copy?" Static. Then, "Jude?" He leaned forward. "Say again, confirm identity." The voice dissolved into white noise. The GPS reset, the compass spun, then everything stopped. No engine sound, no wind, no hum, just stillness, like falling into the pause between heartbeats. Jude gripped the yoke, knuckles pale. "This is Callahan. Do you read?" Nothing. Outside, the clouds glowed faintly. A low shimmer of light, blue, then green, then gone. Barker let out a quiet whine from the back. He wasn't scared, just watching. Jude stared ahead, eyes wide, breath shallow, and then the radar trace vanished. The sun was already high when Becky arrived at the airport. She didn't speak to anyone, just parked near the hangar and stood with her arms folded tight across her chest, eyes fixed on the sky. Davy approached slowly, wiping his hands on a rag that smelled like fuel and nerves. Tower says he dropped off radar just past Nassau. No comms, no ping. Becky didn't answer. He's not the first to vanish out there, Davy added. But he didn't finish the thought. I don't care, she said quietly. He said he'd come back. Davy fell silent, standing beside her with the stillness of someone who knew there was nothing else to say. From across the tarmac, a folding chair scraped. Charlie had found a spot near the fence line and sat down heavily, notebook open on his lap. He's gone, he said, voice like gravel. Trace vanished clean, no echo. Becky turned toward him, eyes flashing. You don't know that. I've tracked this for years, Charlie replied. When they vanish, they stay gone, sometimes for good, sometimes... She cut him off. Don't finish that sentence. Charlie held up his hands in surrender. I'm just saying, don't get your hopes twisted up. That sky doesn't always give back what it takes. Becky folded her arms tighter, her breath shaking. He said he would come back. That's the last thing he said to me. Charlie didn't argue, just sat still, gazed distant. The wind stirred, and they waited. Inside the control tower, the room was still except for the faint hum of electronics and the distant hiss of an old coffee machine. The radar tech leaned in close, headset snug against one ear. November 820, do you copy? He said again. Static, a flutter. Nothing. He adjusted the gain. Tried again. Jude, this is Miami Center. Come in. Only the soft crackle of dead air answered. He sighed, rubbed his eyes, looked across the room. The shift supervisor stood behind him now, arms folded, face grim. Try once more. The tech keyed the mic. November 820, this is Miami Center. Jude, if you're out there, say something. The room held its breath, but the silence didn't break, only the same hiss and the sound of time slipping forward. 3 days later, a radar technician at Miami Center spilled coffee on his lap. Damn it, he hissed, grabbing napkins and blotting the front of his khakis. Then he looked up at the screen, froze. Hey, Ron, check this out. Ron, a supervisor with 20 years of monotony under his belt, leaned over his shoulder. That's November 820, the tech said, tapping the screen. Ron frowned. That can't be right. Same coordinates where we lost him. Altitude steady. Transponders clean. A voice crackled through the comms. Broken, faint, like a memory trying to reform. Is Novem 82 back. Request land. Ron grabbed the mic. Say again. Jude, is that you? Confirm identity. The reply came through, slightly clearer. This is Callahan, requesting permission to land at Opelika, returning from system failure, minor turbulence. Ron stared at the screen, then at the tech, then back again. He thinks he just turned around. Minutes later, the Cessna broke through a band of clouds and glided in like nothing had happened. Flawless approach. Landing gear down. No smoke, no sparks, no signs of distress. The plane touched down gently and taxied toward the hangar. Davy was already sprinting across the tarmac. The cabin door swung open. Jude stepped out, blinking against the light. What are you doing out here? He asked. Davy stopped short. You've been gone 3 damn days. Jude frowned. No, I just turned back, 20 minutes ago maybe. No, Davy said, his voice cracking. You took off Tuesday morning. It's Friday, Jude. Jude looked up at the sky, then back at Davy. He sat down on the step of the aircraft, slowly, and said nothing. Jude drove home in silence. Barker lay curled in the passenger seat, head resting on his paws, eyes half-lidded. He hadn't made a sound since they landed. Just sat beside Jude like nothing had happened. But something had. 3 days had vanished. The neighborhood looked the same. Quiet lawns, mailboxes, wind chimes. A woman walked her dog 2 houses down. A sprinkler ticked rhythmically on a patch of overwatered grass. Jude pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. Barker sat up, ears perked slightly. They stared at the house together. Jude exhaled and stepped out. Barker followed, tail low but steady. He opened the door without knocking. Becky? From the kitchen came the soft sound of a mug setting down, then silence. Becky appeared in the hallway, eyes puffy, wearing one of his old shirts. She froze. The mug slipped from her hands and shattered on the tile. She ran. He barely caught her in time. She threw herself into his arms, legs wrapping around him, face pressed hard into his neck. You're alive. You're alive. You're alive. Jude held her tightly, eyes closed. Barker sat just inside the doorway, watching, tail thumping once against the floor. I thought I'd just landed, Jude whispered. 20 minutes, maybe. I don't remember anything else. Becky pulled back just enough to look at him, brushing his face with trembling hands. "It's been 3 days," she said. "I know. I don't know how. It was clouds, and light, and then nothing." She looked at him for a long time. "Are you going back?" He shook his head. "No, that was my last flight." He stepped further inside, still holding her, and Barker followed them in. Then Jude reached back and gently kicked the door closed behind them. Across town, in a dim garage that smelled of dust and solder, Charlie sat hunched over his old desktop computer. The only light came from a flickering desk lamp and the glow of a faded CRT monitor. A soft ping broke the silence. He clicked. A forwarded news article opened. "Pilot returns after 3-day vanishing. Claims only minutes passed." There was a photo. Jude, stepping out of the Cessna, eyes squinting into the sun. Charlie stared at it for a long time. Then, quietly, he smiled. "He made it," he murmured. He closed the browser and turned in his chair. On the workbench behind him sat a map, covered in pinholes and red thread. A row of cassette tapes lined the shelf above, and next to them, a hand-drawn flight plan. The coordinates weren't Jude's, they were his own. Charlie stood, picked up the notebook, and traced a finger along the margin. He didn't need to chase someone else's ghost. He had his own.